All right, guys, welcome back. My name is Courtney. Today, we're just going to talk about a couple things that I have found to be very important for our homeschool structure and that have kept me moving along on our path. So go ahead and sit down and get ready to join us. All right, guys, so like I said, today we're just going to talk about some things that I have found instrumental in our homeschool journey. So the first thing is finding out what type of homeschooler you are. And so when I say that, there's unschoolers, deschoolers, Charlotte Mason, Montessori traditional. So let's talk a little bit about those different types of homeschoolers so that you can kind of define like where do you think you fall, or maybe you're a kind of a mesh of a couple different ones. So deschooler would be someone who had their children in school, whether that be public, private, charter, or whatever, and then they pull their kids out. And so sometimes people go down kind of a decolonization path because they feel that when their children were in school, the curriculum that they were being taught had a, what I want to say, like a slant to it, right? So it was very Americanized, very much. And when I say Americanized, like white Americans being the victors of history, writing history, then teaching children a certain way. And that doesn't maybe so much creep into math or well, maybe just math. But when you talk about geography, history, social studies, even the types of literature that children read, that slant can pull people off course. So that would be like a deschooling type of situation. Unschooling would be a lot of following the child, maybe doing a lot of reading and then following the child's interests, following what they say they like to do, observing them, and then just going down that path. There might not be a lot of workbooks involved in that type of schooling. It might not be a set schedule, maybe lots of field trips and lots of learning based on the world, maybe travel schooling, going around to different states or different countries, picking up on the culture, the foods, the languages, and then learning that way. You can have Charlotte Mason, which is more of embracing nature, being outdoors, lots of nature. I think I already said that, but lots of incorporating art, poetry, literature, and seeing how those things work together to form a framework for the entire world. And then traditional would be more of workbooks, following more of a set schedule, following more of an outline of on day 1 we do pages 1 to 3, on day 2 we do pages 4 through 5, like following the workbook regardless of your child's interest. And that could be that was the way I was schooled, was more traditional. So we had like a teacher's manual, you had maybe like a textbook and a workbook, right? So the parent is kind of reading a script, the child I had a workbook in front of me, a textbook that I would be reading, and then the workbook would have corresponding lessons, which would be like what you're writing on, right? So that was what we did a lot of the time, was that more traditional style. You follow A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you don't get off course, you don't skip around, and you just go straight through. Flashcards, memorization, things of that nature. Now, my mom did also do some living books, which I will try to find that link and put it below. And believe it or not, those are the things I remember, was those living books. We read the book about, it's a story about like I think a tree that's carved into a canoe, and maybe the canoe like paddled to the sea, something like that. Anyway, that's something I remember from being in 3rd and 4th grade, and that left an impression on me. So living books was something that she used. We follow the Montessori method for education, which is based on Maria Montessori. She was an Italian physician in the early 1900s. Her philosophy was that you respect the child, you follow the child based on their interest, and you observe what they are interested in, then you build on that prepared environment, which is when the child arrives, like if they were to arrive to a school setting, everything's ready to go and nothing is out that's broken or missing pieces. Things are organized in difficulty from left to right, from top to bottom, just to help train the child's eyes and their body to move from left to right like you do in the Western world when it comes to reading. You know, we do things from left to right. And some other pillars of Montessori are just that you don't push the child to do something they're not interested in. You more invite them to participate in the lesson. The adult serves as a guide versus being the teacher. And when I say that, instead of it being teacher-led, which is today, we're going to study birds because it's spring and birds lay eggs, so this is what naturally is going to happen. But if the child is not interested in birds, like if the child's like, you know what, really I'm interested in trains, being able to say, okay, you know what, even though I would prefer we work on birds, the child would prefer we talk about trains, so we're going to talk about trains. So that's why I say when it's child-led, you have the resources and the materials available, and the child moves around the room, decides what they want to do. But you as the parent or the teacher are putting out things that are appropriate for their developmental level. That way, you know, whatever they do choose is something that's appropriate for them. It should have the type of challenge level that keeps them interested, but it's not so hard that they're frustrated, but it's not so easy that they're bored. So that's what we do. And so I encourage you, if you're getting started on your homeschool journey, or if you're frustrated with your homeschool journey, like you're homeschooling and things are not working, it's not making sense. Every day it's frustrated. If you have those days where everyone is crying, things are not getting done, people are drooping their shoulders, you've seen it. The head is hanging when they have to come to the table to do work, and you're dreading it yourself, like, here we go, it's gonna be another long day. I encourage you maybe to take a step back and look at your environment, look at your children, look at your schedule or your flow or your rhythm, and determine, are you doing the type of school that best serves your family? Because maybe there's room for change. I think that's one of the great things about homeschooling is you can change. You can decide to do something different. You're not held to the laws of, or not the laws, but the structure of a school district where you know, someone else is telling you what curriculum you're using, or your principal is deciding that these are the things that are important in our building, or these are the things that, you know, the superintendent has said that we're going to do, so these are the things that you have to push forward. Like, you are your principal, you are your superintendent. So if something's not working, change, take a break. You know, you don't have to say, oh, well, we have to finish the week. No, if it's Wednesday and it's not working, then stop. Take Thursday and Friday to start figuring things out and researching, so that Monday maybe you can start afresh. So that was the first thing that I needed to do, was decide what type of homeschooling we would do. Next is finding out what the laws are for your state. So what I did was I started with our school district, and then I started with our, not school district, our state, like the Department of Education for your state. Then on there, if you search homeschooling, you should be able to find what the laws are for your state, because every state does have laws. So find out what the laws are, so that you're working within those laws and you're protecting yourself and your family. Where we live, the laws are very lenient. I don't have to report to the state or to the school district that I'm homeschooling my children. In my state, kindergarten is optional, so it wouldn't matter if we were homeschooling or not. For kindergarten, you don't have to send your kids in our state. But as for my first grader, I don't have to report to anyone. We do keep a portfolio, and I do keep records of what we do as far as our like lesson plans. But no one comes in and checks on us. We don't have to do testing. I know some states you have to do testing. So find out what your state, your laws are, and I suggest you do it every year, because laws change. Like even our neighboring state, which we live very close to a state line, their laws just changed last year. So once a year, check in, make sure you know what the laws are. And even if your state doesn't require record keeping, I would keep records anyway. One, just so you know like what you guys did, and if it's something great, you might want to do it the next year with the next kid, or you know, repeat that lesson. Two, if the laws do change, I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I'd have to come up with, you wouldn't have to go, I guess, retrospectively, like go back and prove that you've been homeschooling, but I wouldn't want to say, well, you know, for 5 years we have been doing stuff. but there's no proof of that either. I would feel more comfortable. I feel more comfortable just knowing. And I don't keep everything. Like, I don't keep every scrap of paper. I don't keep all the artwork. Like, that makes me crazy. I hate having a ton of papers, but I do keep a couple things from each quarter. And what we do is we don't have a lot of paperwork just because of the Montessori method. Like, we don't have a ton of paperwork, but I have pictures on my phone of things that we do. So that's one way to make sure that you're staying within the lines. Check once a year. And then there is a organization, I will put that link below, that I believe lists all 50 states and their laws. And homeschooling is legal in all 50 states. So you just have to find out like what the rules are for your I almost knocked over my water bottle. You just have to find out what the rules are for your state so you can work within that. So number one, finding out what kind of homeschool you are. Number two, deciding or finding out what the rules are. Number three, I think, is making sure you have the support that you need and what that's going to look like. So my husband was on board with homeschooling. He went to public school his whole life, and he was like, you know what, I'm good. Like, if you feel like you're capable and you can do it, then homeschool them, that's fine. Sometimes you're gonna have pushback. Everyone's not gonna be on board. People are gonna think that's weird, that's odd. What makes you qualified? What things have I heard? I remember when I told people I was homeschooled, people were always like, oh, is your mom a teacher? And I always think that was a weird question. I'm like, well, she's teaching me. Like, yeah, I guess. But they wanted to know, like, did she go to school to be a teacher? And I'm like, no, that's what they have teacher guides for. Like, she follows a teacher's guide and she's equipped to teach. So looking at your support system, there are so many different outlets, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, a lot of community, well, I shouldn't say a lot. Some communities have co-ops or organizations. You just have to find one that you think works for your family. Where we live, when we started, things didn't look the way I wanted them to look as far as having an organization, so we formed a little co-op. When I was a kid, let's think back, okay, 90s, Midwest, Black homeschoolers, kind of a rare thing. But we had my mom and her friends, like my mom had 3 kids, one of her friends had 8 kids, and one of her friends had 6 kids. Well, you already have a group right there with all those kids. But what I'm saying is they made a way to have groups. We had a Black homeschool choir, so we sang, we practiced at different houses, and we had a choir director. He was like a professionally trained, I guess, musician, vocalist. So we learned to read music, and we performed. Now, I cannot sing to save my life, but I do know how to read music. But what we did was we performed at nursing homes during the holidays. So we had a homeschool choir. We participated in recitals for like my sister played the piano, my friends, they played the violin and piano, so they were in this youth symphony. They played in recitals all the time. So that's a group. We did a annual Black History program, which you didn't have to be Black to participate. Anyone could participate, and anyone did. But that was an annual event where we rented out a church. We performed on the stage. This was not some hodgepodge mess. Like, we had rehearsals. We got up there, practiced with the microphone. Your part had to be memorized. People usually dressed up as different characters. I remember, and adults participated too. So I'm saying that to say, you can create your group if you don't have one. We participated in a co-op when I was a kid. So my mom taught a couple classes, and then I remember I took woodshop and German. But so look around, see if you have a group in your area, because I do think it helps to have a group to connect with. And there are religious groups, there's secular groups, there's groups that do teaching that's like more core curriculum teaching, some that do extracurricular, and those classical conversations, like wild and free groups. So look around. If you don't see something in your area, like maybe you live in a rural area, or maybe you don't see the kind of people who look like you in your area, just maybe get online, ask some people, and then start the group. It might start off small, but I really do think it helps when you have that camaraderie and you have other homeschool moms just to talk to, and makes your kids maybe feel a little less isolated, which is a completely different topic, which we can get to another time. But those are the things that I think are most important. And then lastly is curriculum, which once again is a completely different topic. But I think a lot of times people start with curriculum, and I think that can be a little frustrating because one, there's so many choices. But if you don't know what type of homeschool style you want to incorporate in your home, and you start with curriculum first, you might mold yourself to fit the curriculum versus choosing a curriculum that fits your mold. So I would just be cautious of that, because I've chosen things that have not worked for us, and I'm like, why? Like, frustrated trying to make it work, but at the end of the day, it's not going to work because that's not the kind of person that I am. So I can't make the curriculum something that it's not. So those are the things I think are most important to us right now. If you have something else that you think is important for starting homeschool, please drop it in the comments below. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.